Hello everyone, welcome back to episode 4 of MLOps series. In episode 2, we trained our first broken model. In episode 3, we tried to deploy it behind an API and Docker. And it completely failed on real world messages. Real world messages. Today, we are going to fix that. And before we dive in, if you are actually learning something from this real world style, not just theory, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment saying pipeline so I know you are following this series properly. Because episode 4 is where real ML ops actually starts. We are going to take the same broken setup and convert into a proper production style ML pipeline. We are going to model plus pre-processing bundled together, followed by one artifact to save and load, cleaner API, and behavior that makes sense for real users. Let's get started. Quick recap before jumping into the demo. In episode 3, our API was technically fine. FastAPI was running fine. Docker container was healthy. With 200 OK responses. But the actual predictions were wrong or random on real world messages. Why? Not because the model was wrong, but because the pipeline was wrong. So in the previous episodes, we saved the model and vectorizer separately. Training and inference logic were not 100% aligned. No single version pipeline object. Today, we fix exactly that. So what's the exact fix? We are going to create one pipeline that does vectorizer and model prediction. This means text, vectorization, model prediction all inside a single object. We will train it once and save it as a pipeline.pkl. Log it in MLflow, and then both training and serving will use the same pipeline. No mismatch. This is the first real step from just ML code to MLOps. Alright, let's jump into the demo. I'm going to jump to the Visual Studio Code. Here I have MLOps episode 4 folder. It's the same exact structure which we followed in previous episodes. We have data folder, model folder, Docker file, and requirements.txt. In the model folder, I'm going to jump to train underscore version 2.py file. Let me explain this in simple language, no ML theory. We are trying to load the CSV file here. Then we are trying to define the pipeline in two steps. One is count vectorizer, and the second one is logistic regression, that is basic classifier. This pipeline is the brain plus eyes combined, not separate. Then we do a train and split, followed by we are trying to train the pipeline, evaluate the accuracy. These are the exact same steps which we did in our previous episode. Followed by, this is very important step once again. Here we are saving the entire pipeline in pipeline.pkl. And finally, we are trying to log the accuracy and artifact in MLflow as a new experiment called production pipeline underscore v1. Now let's try to train the model real quick. Source dot virtual environment bin activate. Every time we have to use virtual environment, please remember this point so that you're not installing the packages globally. I'm going to run pip install real quick. So everything looks good. Now let's try to train the model using Python model train underscore version2.py file. Press enter. So if you see, the pipeline accuracy looks good. It is similar to what we saw previously, but don't worry about the exact number. The important thing here is the packaging is now correct. Now let's try to open MLflow real quick. So I'm going to use MLflow UI port 5000 and open it in the browser. So here if we look at the experiments, we have production pipeline v1, and I'm going to open this real quick. If you look at the artifacts, we have pipeline.pkl. From now on, every model we train will have a proper packaged pipeline behind it. Now let's try to test the pipeline locally. So let me jump back to my infer underscore version2.py file. So if you remember, previously we were loading it manually, but instead of loading a model and a vectorizer separately, we just load only one file, that is pipeline.pkl. Then I've added a mix of real world messages, some that look like training data, some totally noisy. Let's try to run this and we'll look at the predictions. Now let's try to run the infer underscore version2.py, press enter, and let's look at the predictions. So if you see, internet dies every night after 11 p.m. network issue. I paid the bill yesterday, still showing due billing. Balance cut, billing. Now look at the predictions. You'll notice they are more stable, more consistent, and much more reasonable for real world text. That's the power of packaging your pre-processing plus model together as a pipeline. We didn't change the model type, we just changed the design. Now let's look at our API underscore version2.py file. So if you remember, we loaded a model and vectorizer separately. That's where things got messy. In API version 2, we only load one object, that is full pipeline. When we get a text, we are going to pass it to the pipeline.predict and return the label. No manual transformation, no duplicated logic, much cleaner and safer. Now let's try to run that locally real quick. So I'm going to run ubicon model API version 2 app reload. Press enter. I can open that in browser. So I need to pass /docs here. So if you see, model API version 2 proper pipeline we have. Now let's try to predict some. So I'm going to try it out. So here I would say internet dies every night after 11 p.m. So I'm going to pass that string here, execute. And if you see the prediction, it says network. Let's see, sir, net no working. I'm going to try for this message. Execute. It says network problem. You can see the behavior is much better. Same framework, same container, same tool chain. You can see now the behavior is much better. Framework is same, container is same, tool chain is same. What changed? The pipeline design. Now I'm going to jump back to my Visual Studio Code. Here I have Docker file as well. So if you look at the Docker file, this is also updated. I updated the artifacts folder here and followed by the API version 2. Now let's try to build that image real quick. So I'm going to close this and try to run docker build. Now let's try to run docker build command real quick and try to build the image. Press enter. We are using the same exact pattern as episode 3. If you look at my docker file, docker image got built successfully. Now let's try to run that real quick. So if you look at the docker file, we are using the same pattern what we had in episode 3. Base image is same, requirement.txt file is same. We are trying to pip install, copy the stuff, and then we are trying to just change the version 2. This is like ready. Now let's try to open it in a browser real quick. So I'm going to open my browser and paste this. If you see ML model API version 2 proper pipeline. We can do the same exact prediction. Let's try it out. And I would say network is working. Execute. It says network is working. And in the prediction, it says network. Now let's do a quick recap of today's episode. What kind of lessons we learned? So what did we really fix today? We didn't switch to a fancy deep learning model. We didn't change algorithm. All we did was bundle preprocessing plus model into a single pipeline. Followed by we saved it as one single artifact. We loaded the same pipeline in inference and logged it cleanly in MLflow. This is the difference between I have a model dot pkl and I have a production style ML pipeline. This is MLOps thinking. In episode 5, we are going to take this pipeline and add automated retraining. Also, we are going to compare new versions versus old versions and start building CI/CD for ML models, where we automatically reject bad models before they hit production. If you watched till here, you are serious, hit like, subscribe, and comment production ready so I know who's actually following the series. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.